All right, today we're diving into a really dark and, frankly, often overlooked chapter of history from North India. We're talking about a period marked by extrajudicial killings that left some incredibly deep scars on the entire region. Just let that sink in for a moment. This single sentence from our source material really captures the brutal, terrifying reality of what we're about to get into. It's so simple, and that's what makes it so chilling. So, our story really kicks off in the state of Assam, with a series of events that became so infamous they earned their own name. This phenomenon was called Gupta Hatya, or the secret killings. And this wasn't just random violence, not at all. It was a very specific, calculated campaign that ran from 1998 to 2001, and it systematically went after people connected to the insurgent group ULA. And the human cost of this, it's just staggering. The estimate is that during this 3-year period, around 1,100 people were killed. I mean, that is a devastating number. So this is the really crucial point here. Who were these victims? Well, in most cases, they weren't active militants. They were family members, people who were just suspected of being sympathizers, a lot of non-combatants. We're talking about the elderly, women, and in some documented cases, even pregnant women. They were targeted for who they knew, not for what they did. And these killings were incredibly targeted. They reached right to the top of the insurgency's family networks. For example, victims included the brother of ULFA's own chief and the mother of its publicity secretary. So you can see, this wasn't just about spreading terror. It was a clear strategy. But the story doesn't stop in Assam. What was happening there was actually part of a much wider regional pattern of violence, even though the methods looked pretty different from one state to the next. So let's look at the neighboring state of Manipur. Here, a totally different term entered the conversation: the fake encounter. The violence here wasn't happening in these clandestine nighttime raids. Instead, these were official actions by state commandos that were later alleged to be, well, staged killings. This timeline just lays bare the slow, grinding pace of justice. I mean, take the case of Major Shiza. He was killed back in 1998. It took until 2020, that's 22 years, for a charge sheet to even be filed, and then another 2 years for a court to finally frame charges against the accused. And this one case, it really became a symbol for the entire issue in Manipur. The fact that it saw any progress at all, even after all those decades, is what makes it such a rare exception. For hundreds of other families, there's been no accountability at all. So what we have here are two states, both experiencing this wave of extrajudicial violence, but with totally distinct methods. Let's kind of break down those differences. The playbook was completely different. In Assam, it was the knock and shoot at home, carried out by these shadowy assailants. But in Manipur, official state commandos were often involved in what were officially described as firefights, events that investigations later found to be staged. So you have two different scripts for the exact same tragic outcome. Okay, so with this level of violence, you have to ask, what was the official response? Well, let's get into the long and often incredibly frustrating quest for justice. This sequence of events just became tragically familiar. First, there'd be a massive public outcry. Then, judicial commissions would be formed. Years, and I mean years later, reports would finally be released. And sometimes a small amount of compensation might be paid. But that final, crucial step, actually identifying and convicting the perpetrators, that almost never happened. And this table really tells a similar story, doesn't it? In Assam, the Saikia Commission did this amazing work documenting the killings, but it just didn't lead to widespread prosecutions. In Manipur, you had the Supreme Court and the CBI stepping in, which led to those rare charges we talked about, but the vast majority of cases still unresolved. So this brings us to the biggest question of all. Why? Why did so many of these cases, involving over 1,000 victims, ultimately just go cold? Well, the reasons are really baked into the system. For one, the cases were politically explosive. Investigations were often deliberately slow-walked or politicized. Witnesses were, as you can imagine, terrified to come forward. And then you have these huge legal hurdles, like getting initial police reports filed or getting the official permission needed to prosecute security personnel. This final quote from our sources really just hits the nail on the head. When the very system that's supposed to investigate is itself implicated, well, gathering evidence becomes a nearly impossible task. And that leaves us here with this one final lingering question. For the families of these victims, after more than 20 years of waiting, when the trail has gone cold, what can justice possibly look like now? It's a question that continues to echo across Northeast India.